Welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. We've got my friend Craig Steele of Exclusive Pursuit Outfitters on the line. Craig, how you doing?
Good, Jay. How you doing, man?
Good. First, I wanted to congratulate you and Lee on an awesome raffle ram that you guys harvested a month or two ago. What a ram. Tell me about it.
Yeah, we killed him sometime like the beginning of March, um, middle of March, right when the whole coronavirus started. Um, Joe, from Wisconsin won the raffle tag, and we set out to hunt in October, late October 1st, and he came out and he wanted to kill a book ram and have a good hunt. And we hunted for I think for 10 days, and we probably put in I don't know 7 8 days scouting prior to that between Lee and I, and then we had a young guy Clayton doing some scouting for us as well, and we started out hunting 16A and 18B area off of 93, Highway 93. And we looked over I know we looked over like 96 sheep. Probably half of those were rams in there. Saw a couple nice rams. A lot of the rams were really beat up. Learned some new country. Just didn't see anything that was kind of worthy of, the raffle tag. And so we ended up packing up a few days into when Joe was here and pulled country and um, moved back over to Unit 15D. And we spent, I don't know, another 6 or 7 days hunting 15D North and 15D South. We scouted 16A, 18B, 15D, and 15C South. And the best ram that we had found, well, the best two rams, one was in 16A, which would be the west side now, I guess. And then the other one was in 15D. But nothing was kind of bomber. We wanted to kill a no doubt, 107 plus inch ram. Everything was kind of teetering in that mid to upper 160s. Oh, he may go 170. We had a really long ram that we really liked the look of, but I looked at him a couple times, and then we found him again with the hunter, and Joe would have been happy with him. He's a beautiful looking ram, but he just didn't have the mass that I felt comfortable with. I thought that if we shot him, that we were going to walk up to him and shrink. His body was kind of smaller, and I'd seen that ram 2 years ago and filmed him 2 years ago. And again, he was just a gorgeous ram, and it was tough to back off him. But in the end, we talked Joe out of several sheep that were at or near book, and just told him if you have the financial means to get back here, And of course, then we had to go through, all the general hunters and hope and pray stuff didn't, get killed. But kind of a little bit backstory to the ram that Joe ended up killing with us back in March was Clayton Holloway, a young guy. He went and scouted and found two really big rams, but unfortunately, he took pictures and video of them, and he'd never really looked at sheep. In fact, it was the first two sheep that he'd ever looked at, or rams. And he sent me the pictures, and the pictures just weren't great. The lighting wasn't great, and he just didn't know, and I just wanted him to send me pictures of rams. So when I saw something that caught my eye, that we'd go check it out. Well, Joe's ram was the second ram, I believe, no, the third ram that he had seen in person, and it was the second book ram that he ended up filming during that stretch. And I thought the ram from the pictures and everything was, just from the pictures and video that I had were again around, 168 inches. And then it wasn't until after, and we actually looked for the ram because I had a general hunter in that unit in 15D North, Alex, and we actually looked for that ram and couldn't find him before we ended up settling on his old book ram and killing that ram. And it wasn't until after we got done hunting and midway through the season that another guide, or former guide, everybody in the sheep world knows him, Hub Grounds, sent me his pictures and video of the ram. And as soon as I saw his pictures and video, I felt like a complete dumbass, because his pictures and video made the ram look 180. So I knew he was, I knew he was a no doubter at that point in time, and just chalked it up to Clayton's video. It just didn't show, what he actually was, and so we had to wait for the last hunter to finally kill him there. They didn't kill him, and I, told him that he was so thankful that they didn't kill that ram because we had him. We could have went and killed him in October, but I just didn't think he was what we were looking for. So, long story short, we knew what ram we were looking for come March, and I think I found him like March 5th or something like that, and he was in the same area. He was about a mile from where Clayton had filmed him, and I ended up going out of town for a week. And then the whole COVID coronavirus stuff hit. We flew back, and Lee called Joe, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to go see if I can find the ram. If I can find the ram, can you get out here, Joe?" And went and found the ram, and he was worried about flights getting canceled, so he basically drove out here, and we sat on the ram. The next day he showed up. I think Joe got here probably about 4:30 a.m., and I think we killed the ram by 11 o'clock that day. It was a quick trip, and we packed up the ram, got him checked out by 3 o'clock at the Game and Fish here in Kingman. And the next morning at, I think, 6 o'clock, Joe was driving back to Wisconsin. So it was kind of a quick deal, but it wasn't like Joe just hunted, one day or half a day with us. He'd had 11 days of actual hunt time with us, but kind of a cool backstory on that ram. Later on, I got to flash him back from, you remember Linda Kelly's ram. And I remembered a wide young ram that I videotaped there in that same area. And it caught my eye because he was wide and he was unique looking. And I went back through and I found that video, and I'll be damned, it's got to be the same ram. And we killed him a mile from where I filmed him in 2014. So it's kind of a cool backstory. And the rams were really low. We got really lucky when Joe came back here. The rams were really low because the fillery and the feed was just exceptional, and they were just going to town. But Joe's ram was, I think he was 9 years old, and we taped him at 175 and 2/8 net. He was pretty soft at the last quarter inch of his base. He was putting on some good growth for a 9-year-old ram. It was pretty unique to see that, but pretty fortunate and blessed to kill that ram.
He's long, isn't he? 39.
Yeah, he was actually 40 and 0/8. The Game Fish taped him at 39 and 4/8. We taped him probably 5 times at 40 and 0/8. That, not bagging on them, but I know historically they taped all the rams that I've ever killed, and talking with you, they've taped them a little bit short on their length. And that's why I said, Lee, when we got back to my house, I said, I want to measure him again, because we measured him 3 or 4 times at the house afterwards, and we're like, he's 40 inches long. And he kind of thinned out on the ends a little bit. That's what why he wasn't, 180. Of course, he was broomed on one side too, so he lost 3 inches because he was 37 and 2/8, I think, and 40 and 0/8, and he was 30. I think he was 31 inches wide from tip to tip, so he was super wide. Just a cool ram, unbelievable look, just everything that we'd wanted. An older ram with, that was in the mid 70s, everything that you kind of hope for on that tag. And it's amazing that 15D with the pneumonia and everything is still able to produce a ram like that. You
It
know.
kind of reminds me of that Bob O'Connor ram in that same year. Linda Kelly had at 14 is when Dar had, I believe, Bob O'Connor and killed that
Hmm.
175. Real similar looking ram. Good, good bases and then just long and a lot of flare. I think he was 31 inches wide as well. Was this ram tested and did he have pneumonia?
They swabbed him and everything. I haven't heard back on that. That's something I'll have to check up on.
Was he
Because
coughing or
he
nose
wasn't
run?
coughing. He wasn't coughing. I between the general hunt scouting and all that, and the raffle hunt scouting and hunting, I think I saw between. I can't. I don't recall any rams in the 18B country or sheep that I saw that were sick off the top of my head. I know for a fact that I saw a couple ewes, one or two ewes, and I think two rams in 15D that were coughing, and then I saw a ewe in 16A that was coughing her head off. Now, what they get other diseases as well. In 16A, that you could have had something else, but I'm not sure on what any of our rams came back if they came back. But none of the rams that we killed were actually coughing, um, and we watched most of them for a long period of time before we actually killed them. So
What about
that's
in all
good.
your traipsing around, as far as rams actively rutting and chasing ewes? Definitely rutting. I mean, does that indicate that ewes are definitely, you know, coming in? And did you see quite a few lambs?
We did see a lot of, actually, back in March when I started scouting again. I started seeing a lot more lambs than what I expected. I scouting over the summer last year. I didn't see that many lambs. More lambs in 16A and 18B, not as many in 15D. I would say probably maybe one lamb to every 20 ewes. But in March now, they were also really little. So I think the ewes are coming in from what I saw, because there was, I would say that I think I counted probably 40, maybe 40 ewes, back in early March, and probably half of them had lambs.
Good.
So that's good. Now how many of those will actually survive and not get pneumonia is another story. But it's kind of, I was thinking about this whole social distancing stuff because it's so crazy and weird, but it's kind of naturally happening if you look at it for the sheep, in 15D, and that's kind of what it takes to keep that pneumonia virus, to get it out of them. It just takes a lot longer, especially when you're using, limited water sources on dry years. It's not dry now. It's, springs were running that I haven't seen run in 15 years.
Is
And
that
that,
specific to the sheep country? You're saying the sheep country's got a lot of feed and a lot of live water?
yeah, no, it's actually a lot of feeding everywhere. Um, it's, it's exceptional. That our March was exceptional. The timing of the rains was unbelievable. I haven't seen the filler group in this country in at least last year was a good year. Everybody was all excited because of the elk and everything, but um, the timing of the rain this year was better. Um, at least from what I've seen. I've driven from I drove to Phoenix this morning and last night. I drove to uh, Cottonwood the day before that, and then I drove to Payson the week before that from Kingman, basically traveling across I-40. Drove to Vegas, drove to Havasu recently, and it's all green. Of course, the desert now is starting to dry out. We're really drying out quick, which is normal, but all that northern country is. I mean, it looks like the monsoons already came. It reminds me, Jay. It reminds me of '05.
Does it really?
Um, it does. I don't think I've seen it this green this early in May in a long time, and really if you look at the numbers, I think we had more precip last year, but just the timing, was just, I guess, just better this year. But the sheep country, man, those 6, 7 year old rams are, obviously younger, but for those rams that are going to be, 7, 8, 9 years old this year, they're going to put on some growth, if they can, because like the three. Well, I think there was 5 rams total in that little area, but he ended up with 3 rams. Um, they were just, I mean, they could not lift their head up off the feed. And like I said, he had a 1/4 inch of new growth. It was soft, on the base of his horns, and fat. Um, Ram tasted better than any sheep I've ever ate. He was tasted delicious, which, I mean, he had a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of fat over every part of him. So that's really good. I mean, it's exceptional. I didn't think he was gonna. I was not a Debbie Downer, but I was a little bit of a skeptic for a little while because we had a dry February, you know, but we had a really good November, December, January, February was dry, and then March was really good. So, and then we had a storm or two in April.
Let's take a quick little bunny trail here for a second, and couldn't help but ask you about elk unit 10, what your thoughts are, with the moisture that you've seen, the spring moisture that you've seen. What are you thinking for unit 10 for elk?
Man, I think I think it's going to be as good as it can be for the age class that's there. I mean, there's no doubt. It's just a matter of, hopefully it stays hot and dry until the monsoon fires up. Because if it doesn't, like last year, we started getting those low pressures coming in, and that seems to mess us up. Even
We need
talking to a
really
couple,
high temperatures.
we
For
need
those
really
out
high
there listening,
temperatures.
typically
Yes.
you need that hot, Phoenix temperatures like 110 to 120 in June, and get that really, really hot temperature and get real steady, consistent hot weather. And then it seems like right around that 1st of July that if we can get 2 or 3 weeks of just, I mean, hot, hot, that they seem to fire up better.
Yeah, and
Um,
if we can get that, then get that good early consistent monsoon. It's the rut might be one of those years where the rut's a little bit early, and really really cranking versus last year where we didn't get hardly any monsoon. So
all right, well, I want to go through a handful of these Nelsoni sheep units, which you know well, most of them you know well, and I'm not going to mess with the 13s at all, but I'm going to kind of start with
okay,
15A, 15B, 15B West. I kind of want to go through them, get any thoughts that you have about them. I know they've been ravaged by the pneumonia outbreak, but I mean, there are rams in all of those units, and people can have some pretty good hunts. The other thing about several of those hunts is they're just one tag units. So
yeah,
anybody listening that's a non-resident, these units that are one tag units obviously are not available for non-residents. But for you residents out there, there's something about having a one tag unit and being the only person in that unit, and you can take your time. So Craig, let's just talk about 15A, 15B. One tag, it looks like there were 99 first choice applicants, 63 second choice applicants, and believe it or not, 39 non residents wasted their points on it. But I hear it's been hit pretty hard. What do you know?
And that's up by Lake Mead, and I was been on the water twice in the last 2 weeks, and it's funny. You used to see sheep, when I was a kid driving down to the lake, and you don't hardly see any sheep. I can't remember the last time I've seen any sheep, and historically, even back when the numbers were up, I think the best rams that were ever coming out of there may have hit low 150s. And now I think you're really lucky if you can just kill a 140. I personally would not apply for it. I've never applied for it.
Okay.
I've never,
Let's
if
just move
somebody
on to
doesn't,
15B West
yeah,
then.
if somebody doesn't care about score, but also with that being said, there's not a guarantee of you killing a ram in there. You better pack a lunch. You better be prepared because you're going to go days without seeing sheep, and you're just going to have to hunt your ass off. And you might be able to pull out a 150, but that's a big stretch.
Okay, 15B West.
So 15B West, I've been looking at the numbers, and I've seen sheep in there, and I've scouted it. I haven't actually physically hunted sheep in 15B West. That little stretch of mountain range, most of the sheep are off of Highway 93 towards Lake Mead, Hoover Dam. There has been big rams that used to get killed out of there in the 90s in its heyday. They haven't killed a big ram out of there, a 160s type ram in quite some time. But there's some sheep numbers there. I think there's probably anywhere from 70 to 120 head from what I gather from all the information. I
There
think
has to be one decent one there.
there has to be, one decent. I had the guy from Vegas, or where was the guy from? He wasn't. There might have been two tags back then. I think there was two tags. I had a guy from Vegas call me a couple years ago, and he was a DIY guy, and there was supposedly a good ram. I talked to the Game and Fish, and they'd seen a 160s type ram in there, but as far as to my knowledge, nobody killed it. But there has to be, I think if a guy really worked his butt off, or he hired the right guy and they worked their butt off, they could probably produce maybe a low 160s ram. You might get lucky, but I would say if you hunt your ass off, you can kill a mid 150s in there for sure, but you got to hunt hard. And that's, I don't be applying for that expecting a 170-inch ram. Yeah, if you kill a low 160s, you guys should be popping beers and be pretty excited because that hasn't happened in quite some time in there.
15C North.
15C North, I keep hoping that it would come back. There's good genetics in there. My
It
father
got really hammered within
it
a
did.
month.
It just has not. It's basically south or south and west of 15B West. 15C North used to be one of the best Nelsoni units up here. Talking in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and after like 2002, it just has kind of mucked out. We're really mucked out all of 15C. It used to be 15C, and then they split it up into 15C North, C South. It's kind of like how they did D South, D North. What really hurts 15C now
The
is
highway.
the two highways. So Highway 68 that goes from Kingman to Bullhead City or to Laughlin, Nevada. That used to be one lane. And there in Union Pass, those sheep, when there was less traffic, they used to cross that. It was a natural crossing for them. And when they put the divided highway in there, they high fenced it all. And there's only like two underpasses. And I think they've had one sheep in like 20 years go underneath the underpass. And so they don't get that natural flow of sheep. I mean, hell, I missed a ram. I could see the highway when I was a kid. I missed a ram. I could see the highway. I mean, I was less than half a mile from the highway. Those rams used to be, I mean, they all the time you would see them, in sheep you would see them, but so that's kind of killed the influx of sheep moving from D to C back and forth. And then on the north side, which is on the 15C north side, is now they have all the traffic from Highway 93. And they do have the overpasses, and those sheep will use them, but not like they would naturally. And then that pneumonia just really mucked them out. My father-in-law delivers packages from UPS down to Willow Beach area, which is it's on the Colorado River. There's usually a resident herd of ewes and stuff. He's always constantly sending me pictures. What about this? And they're all like 3 to 5 year old rams. There is some good genetics in there. I still think a guy could maybe kill a 160 if he really worked his butt off. I think definitely he could probably kill 150 for sure on that tag. There's only one tag, and the big thing that they did to 15C North and 15C South this year is they made it 2 months. So you have 60 days. So if you're a DIY guy, or if you're a local guy that draws that tag, you're going to have 8 weekends if that's all you got, and it's an opportunity to go sheep hunting. And hey, man, there could be a book ram in there. Just maybe the wrong hunters, haven't had the tag, or the right hunters if you do end up killing one, and
Right.
from that standpoint. But it just hasn't come back, Jay. For whatever reason, and maybe part of that is too is the caliber of hunters. I know their surveys aren't that good, but traditionally most of the guided guys and the guys that have the upper end point totals, and the guys that are really willing to wait for these Nelsoni, they're applying for the 15Ds, and the 16As. So
Right.
that there definitely could be some truth to that, but I think 15D or 15C North and 15B West are very similar. You're going to see a little bit more sheep in 15B West, but I think you got a little bit more country to hunt in C North. So it's kind of a toss up.
Okay, let's talk about the crown jewel of the Nelsoni units, 15D North, 4 tags. Last year there were 1,194 first choice applicants, 786 second. There were 1,093 non-residents that applied. One person with max points drew. That's an increase of 75 from the year before. And I'm looking on GoHunt.com. That's where I'm getting these statistics. Let's talk about your crown jewel there, 15D North.
It's we killed the raffle ram out of there, and then Alex, my general hunter, he killed a book ram, a 10-year-old book ram out of there, a heavy old ram. Had 105 inches of mass. He wasn't sick, to my knowledge. I have to check what his swabs were and all that. But I saw one ram with sinusitis in there. He wasn't healthy, and then 2 rams. I think 1 or 2 rams. I can't remember if the other ram was in D South, but at least 1 ram I know for sure that was coughing in there, and he was a good ram. He was a low 160s ram. The sheep numbers obviously aren't there from what they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Man, I remember being there in the heyday when we were doing those raffle hunts, several years in a row, and you were helping us with those and all that. I mean, they were surveying like 550, 580 sheep, and I mean, that was unbelievable. I remember days going out there and you could see like 75 sheep just from one point. I know
Yeah,
that sounds crazy, but I mean, that's what it used to be like. It was unreal.
it definitely it's different now. There's glassing sessions where you don't see sheep, you know. And I'm not talking an hour. I'm talking a half day where you may not see a sheep. And if you don't know where to look, and what the sheep have definitely kind of gone into their little core areas. You know, the feed changes things, but when the feed dries out, they go into the little core areas. Um, all the rams, I think, I can't remember all the rams, but I know there was a 166. Hub Grounds helped a gal kill a 176 out of there. We killed the next biggest ram, which was what he was official net 168 and 2/8 and 10 years old. And then the 166, and I think there was another like low
Yeah, I got it
160s
here.
ram.
It's a 166, 166, 176, and a 161. Obviously, that's a game and fish score. But the
Yeah,
thing I thought was interesting was 9, 9, 10, and 10. So, I mean,
yeah,
four old sheep. Two of those tag holders out of the four were non residents. One was a max point holder. Um, Even though it's not the crown jewel that it used to be, it's still kind of the crown jewel of Nelsoni sheep hunting. Do you? I mean,
yeah.
pretty much. Don't you agree?
It I still agree with that. I mean, I think next year there's going to be another book ram killed out of there. Um, I, there definitely is. I think out of the four tag holders, if you get quality hunters or whatnot, and they're guys that do their work, or hire somebody that's reputable that will do their work, you should definitely kill you know a 160s ram, and you're definitely going to see at least one book ram come out of there next year. I feel very confident in that, and it's not going to be easy because it's it's still it's not like it was. That one year, I think it was 2015. There was like four 170s. And then Claude's ram was 180 freaking four or something that you guys killed on the raffle hunt. It was unreal. You're not going to see that. You're going to see less sheep. The one thing I did notice this year, because there is less sheep, it seemed like we were crowded more. So that's the one drawback, is the sheep seem like they're only in certain spots. And
Clogging
I
it
know
up.
the day, I know the day that we killed our ram, that that Hub and his hunter, the gal that he was hunting with, he was just helping a friend. They were down below us when we went up to kill our ram, and I know the day before when I was scouting there, um, one of the other guys was scouting there as well. So it's a little bit of a heart wrencher when you see other hunters. So just know that going in. But even with that being said, there was our ram was one of the 166. By the way, um, they measured him short because he had him official scored it. You know how it is. It just depends on who's measuring them
Yeah.
at 168 and 2/8. But
Let's talk.
it
Let's talk about 15D South. Let's move on to 15D South. There's two tags in South. Looks like last year a 161 and a 165, an 8 and a 7.
that is 15D South. My favorite going into next year, for the Nelsonized, and just because of the amount of country, I spent a lot of time in it. Um, the one thing that I think listeners need to understand is 15D North and D South is one big mountain range. They're basically, those sheep come and go across Oatman Highway. And so just because there's a ram that you see in October on the south side does not mean he's going to not end up on the north side, or vice versa.
Seems like they all
Um,
end up on the north side.
it's well, what's crazy about it is the big white ram. We don't know, the raffle ram we killed. He was on the north side in October, down low by himself, and then you had us and two other guys trying to find that ram, and we could not find him. And we spent several because we were going to kill them on the general hunt. At the, at that point in time, if I'd have known, I still thought he was 168. I mean, we'd have killed him. Alex would have killed him anyway if we would have found him, obviously,
in
with
October.
his tag. But we just couldn't. We couldn't find him, and I don't know where that ram went to. But it's I mean, look at where in 2015 where we killed uh, Frank's ram, and he was clear up by Tippery, which is 7 or 8 miles from there, or 6 miles
I
from
mean,
there.
that's one
So
thing that you said it before. I mean, these suckers move a lot. I mean, they literally move from D south up to D north, back to D south. You find rams in south that you've seen in north, and so you never know. I like the one thing I really like about D South is there's quite a bit of wilderness, and there's kind of a couple easy spots, but then there's a couple of there's some stuff you got to work at to get to, and so it just
a
always in the
ram
back of
could
my
get
mind. Yeah,
lost.
that's what I was going to say. A ram could get big and could get lost and get some age on them, but you can also get your butt kicked in that unit
You
too.
can't. Yeah, it's not a hunt.
for a,
It's not a hunt
for a pansy.
if you can't find one in the easy spots like you're talking about. It's not a hunt for somebody who doesn't like to
Right.
hike in,
Yeah.
and also go some time without seeing some sheep. So the problem with the south side that a lot of guys don't understand is it doesn't look traditionally like the other sheep country where it's all rocky and jaggy. It's kind of big and monotonous looking.
Yeah.
Um,
It's a
and those
grinder for sure.
it is for sure. But I like that unit. Um, you can't go wrong. I think you hunt for a book ram in that unit without a doubt. And then it's one of the units that my family's applying for. So if that tells you guys anything on whether or not you should apply for it. And there's only 2 tags too, so there's so much country in there with 2 tags. Um, you're, you only have to worry about the one other guy killing or one other person killing. So that to me gets kind of lost in all this. The 1 and 2 tag hunts are exceptional experiences. Exceptional.
Craig, I want to take just a second here to thank the sponsors of the podcast. Give me a second. I had to return a text here. Um, yeah, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank GoHunt.com. You guys hear me talk about my friend Cody Nelson, the glassing guru. I call him the optics authority. Uh, Craig, you know Cody very well. He's the optics manager at GoHunt.com in the gear shop. Cody Nelson, you can reach him if you're looking at any optics at all to purchase, whether it be binos, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, tripods, anything to do with glassing. You can give him a call at 702-847-8747. That's extension 2. You can send him an email directly at optics@gohunt.com. He also likes it if you send him a text, or you can call him on his cell phone, which is 602-399-3699. I appreciate all the work he does. It's about every other day I get a message from a customer, from a J Scott Outdoors listener, Go Hunt customer that says, how much they are impressed with Cody's customer service. So get a hold of Cody if you're looking for optics. I also want to thank GoHunt.com, the insider. Remind you guys, you get a $50 Go Hunt Gear Shop gift card just for signing up for the insider. Go to GoHunt.com/JScott. You have access then to the strategy articles. It's what I'm looking at here when I'm talking to Craig, going over all these numbers. And then the insider breaks down the harvest statistics, the draw odds, everything to do with these different animals across these different states. So go to GoHunt.com/JScott. I want to thank Kuyu Ultralight Hunting. We just did a podcast with Brendan Burns on the new Velo camo pattern. They now have 3 patterns, the Verde, the Vias, and the Velo. Go to kuyu.com. It's direct to consumer. You can buy everything right there on the website, kuiu.com. Also, phonescope.com. Use the JScott20 promo code to get 10% off on all orders. And then onxmaps.com, use the JScott20 promo code. You're going to get 20% off on all orders. And Apex Ammunition, that's what I used on all the Gould's turkey hunts. Go to apexmunition.com. It's the home of the TSS, the Tungsten Super Shot. Craig, speaking of TSS, you might consider doing some of your predator hunts with this TSS. I think you'd be very impressed with the knockdown power that this stuff has. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's pretty dang sweet.
I'd never heard about the Apex ammunition until you just said it right there, and that's the first thing that crossed my mind with tungsten because it's so dense and heavy.
Yeah,
I've shot Kyles with tungsten before, and it's expensive, but it rolls them up. So I'll have to check it out.
yeah. I told the Apex guys about you, and I think they're going to be giving you a call because they do some phenomenal predator loads as well. And the basic principle is they're shooting very small tungsten shot, but you're able to get much more because of the size. Super heavy. You're able to get much denser pattern, a lot more pellets, and the knockdown, the penetration's unbelievable. So uh, I want to keep rolling here and get to 16A. And now 16A, you had talked about 16A is split into two units. There's 16A South and 18B, and then there's 16A. So for this, let's talk about 16A first, which is basically like the Mojaves and all of that main, what I would call the main part of 16A, traditional main part of 16A.
Yeah, so we had a hunter in there, Michael, um, and it was Lee was the lead guide on that, and we started a couple days late just because of our schedule. There's two tags in there. I'll just go through kind of how the hunt went, and then tell you, my thoughts on the hunt or on the hunt for going into this next year. But there's two hunters again this year, like there was last year, and the one guy that drew, both of them were residents. The one guy that drew, he applied for like 25 years or something. He was an older gentleman, couldn't get around that well. He had some help from a guy that knew our buddy Hunter Haynes, just a good friend of his, and they ended up killing the second biggest ram that we had known of. It was funny because Lee was watching the ram that day. I think it was the day that Michael was supposed to get there, our hunter. And so it was like the second or third day of the hunt. And Lee's like, we called that ram RI because he had an RO because he had a right outside chip. They look very similar. Both the bigger rams look very similar, but the RI ram, the one that we killed, was 6 or so inches bigger. But Lee had that ram found, and the ram was still a little bit ruddy, and they ended up feeding down towards this road. And Lee texted me or called me, I can't remember where, but he goes, if those guys come back out that road, they're going to see this ram and kill him. And sure enough, he goes, that ram's dead. And I'm like, well, I was relieved, because that was our number 2 ram. That was not the ram that, we wanted to kill. We knew the other ram. We had video. Our other friend and guide, Kenny Upton, had found the bigger ram back in November and videotaped him, and he knows sheep really well. And he thought he was a booked ram, and by all of our pictures and everything that we had of the ram, TCAM pictures, we thought he was a booked ram. And so I was relieved. So of course, me being me, Jay, Lee went back to camp to meet Michael, and I go, well, did you go over? And he goes, no, maybe I will. I'm like, I'm going over there. So I drove up to their camp and congratulated them, and I said, hey, I don't want to feel like a jackass here, but I said, do you mind if I lay a tape on them? And they were ecstatic, that I going to lay a tape on them. It
Which
was
in your
awesome to
mind
see
you were
that old
thinking
guy.
it was going to help you calibrate your
Yeah, that's
brain.
all I was doing was calibrating it. As much as a jackass move as it sounds like, I mean, that's what I was doing, And we thought I had worked the ram all the way down to like 161, and I think I taped him. I think rough, and I was like, hell, he's 163 to 165, depending on who taped them. It was dark and everything. I'm like, call him 164 because I think I got 164 and change. And I'm like, our Ram's definitely a book Ram, and if our Ram should be 170, based on the differences that we knew. And so from there, it was just all about finding this Ram we called RI, and we pounded it where we had filmed the Ram, where Kenny had filmed the Ram. And in fact, our hunter had come over there and met Kenny and did some scouting with him, and he filmed the Ram as well, the big Ram. And Lee and I could not find him. We
Frustrating, isn't it?
we looked and looked and looked, and finally, I think on the sixth day, I caught a glimpse of him about 3 miles away. I glassed up a Ram, and I hauled it over there, and he was on the middle of this tall ass peak, and you had to drive like 7-10 miles to look at the other side of it. You can't, or you got to hike up there, which is a half day's hike, and then you got to stay up there because you're not coming down, and you don't want to just hike up for a half a day. And so he disappeared. Well, the next day we made plans to try to find him, and we spent another 3 days or 2 days trying to find him, and we couldn't find him. We called our other young guy, Clayton, said, "Hey, can you get down here to come help us try to find this Ram?" And finally, the last night, Michael was booked for a 7-day hunt. We had to go do a deer hunt in like 3 days, 2 days. And, Michael was getting a little bit worried that, here we are, we can't find this Ram, and our number 2 Ram's been killed. And in between all of this, there was a big one-horn Ram. And we'd had pictures of him 23 miles from where he had shown up. He moved 23 miles in a month.
There you go.
And it's the same Ram. He's one horn. He's got a big left side. It's a shame. He's a book Ram, but he's, broken on that side. And there's no doubt it's the same Ram. So now we're starting to fret that, the rut's over with this Ram. Who knows where he could be? He could go to 44 for all we know, and glassed up there. I mean, there he was. I'd been up there the day before, stayed up there all day, and he must have been on the wrong spine from me, and it was just him. And the next day we rolled around there and got up there, and we killed him on the 8th day of the hunt. And he actually broomed probably about 3/4 of an inch off his left horn. But other than that, he was perfect, and Michael was just, you talk about a guy that was just high on life. Went from thinking we'd lost the Ram, we weren't going to be able to find the Ram, to killing the Ram. It was amazing, but it was a tough hunt. I think
It's a
his
tough
Ram,
unit.
oh yeah, his Ram, I think, Jay, is the biggest Ram, or I think it's the biggest Ram killed out of there in a decade. There may have been one other Ram that I think was 168 or 169 that was right there, but there's only been 2 book Rams killed out of there in a decade. And the reason why, because it's just, it can produce big Rams. I know there was a bigger Ram in there the year before, in the same area, but he was older, and who knows where he went, because he could be in 16B, he could be in 44, he could be in 16A South. I think it's a good hunt. Be prepared not to see that many sheep. Most of the sheep are on the north side in the Mojaves. But the problem is when December comes, is those Rams start chasing feed, especially like we had some good November storms, and that growth had started coming up, and they were chasing feed. And they were, how they are. They like to be around other sheep, but they weren't really rutting. Per se, and a guy on his own, unless he lives right there, can really get frustrated on that hunt, because it was frustrating as guides to have one Ram right there. He'd move 5 miles from where we thought he was, but even 5 miles are really, we worked our ass off to find that Ram. It was it was not easy, but I think you can still kill buck ram out of there. It's a good hunt for, a low to mid 60s ram, but you're just not going to set up and just look at, you know, 40, 50 sheep like you will in D. It's just not going to happen.
16A South 18B.
So we spent a ton of time. I think I brushed over it a little bit. We spent a ton of time in there. Obviously, Jason Carter's ram come out of there, so it kind of got some big time press. But even before Jason's ram, there was some book rams that had been taken out of there, and a lot of those sheep come from 15D. I think some of them in the early part were transplanted from the Navajo Nation, and then they get some of that Mexicana stuff that comes up. There was one ram in there that I really loved him. He's really tight. I think I sent you pictures of him. He's
Mm-hmm.
laying on a rock.
Mm-hmm.
He's really tight, heavy at the ends, but he didn't drop. He didn't have enough ear clearance. Had bad sinusitis. He's a low 160s type ram, beautiful ram. So there's a good diversity of genetics in there.
But you said there's a
Uh,
bunch of beat up rams too.
there is just a crap ton of beat up rams. I mean, half of them, the of the good rams, the rams that were in the upper 50s to low 160s were just beat to piss. And I think the U to ram ratio is pretty close to 1 to 1. So I think that's part of the problem. The other problem you have in there is, even for the couple rams that I saw in there that look like they could be good rams coming up this next year, um, is the lions. That country right there is just chock full of them.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you have Goodwin Mesa, which has a lot of deer and a lot of lions, and those sheep just don't do too well against the lions. So that's the other problem. But it's a good unit. Obviously Jason's ram come out of there. I think you hunt for the book ram in there. If you find something bigger, then great. But if you find a book ram, that's a great ram, and definitely think about shooting them. I think a guy can for sure, if he's a hunter or he hires the right guy, can for sure kill a mid 160s type ram out of there. So it's another good Nelsoni, quasi Mexicana crossover unit. And
Last
you're
but
gonna
not
see you're
least,
gonna see a lot of sheep. You're gonna see a lot of sheep in there if you know where to look. That was one thing I was very surprised at. Probably other than 15D, you're gonna have a more enjoyable hunt in that unit than you will 16A.
with that being said, do you think the last couple of years, and especially because of Jason's ram last year or 2 years ago, there's a there's a little unit there that is probably getting not as touched, and rams aren't dying in that 16A South part. It's 16A South
Yes.
18B, but I mean, I think all the rams that have been harvested have come out of 18B. I think that 16A South, I mean, historically, there's always been a pretty good ram in 16A South. It would not surprise me if there's, you know, someone finds a good one there, because I
No,
think it's
for
been
sure, because
overlooked for a couple years.
it has, and that's one thing. There's a lot of nooks and crannies, and even in the 18B side, there's like endless country where they can go to, and they will go underneath Burrow Creek Bridge. Watch them personally do it. They don't have a problem going underneath that bridge. That's kind of a main travel corridor for them. That and Kaiser Springs, they'll go underneath those bridges, and so they'll go back and forth. Typically, they're around there in the summer, around Burrow Creek in the highway, and then they move. Come October, November, December, they're not around that country as much.
All right, let's
From what
let's go
we've
to
learned.
16B. That's our last unit. This is always a unit that I'm just surprised that it doesn't consistently produce, because it's got real choppy country and has the potential to really hide a ram. And I know one that I think you were watching for a long time ended up switching units and dying over there. But what's your thoughts
Yeah,
on 16B?
They killed the low 160s there last year. The year before that, they obviously killed I think it's a unit record 175. I think that ram was a 16A ram that came over. It may not have been. It's that unit's on around Lake Havasu in the Colorado River there. It's pretty much you can access it by foot, but accessing it by the lake and by boat is gives you a significant advantage. From what I've seen historically, a low 160s ram, 150 high 150s, the low 160s is what guys usually take. Most of the hunters in there are usually DIY guys. I know the guy that killed the big ram, and he was going to kill one of the other rams. Luckily, he had somebody with him that uh, our guide Kenny was. He's also friends with him that knew what he was looking at. And another friend, talked him out of shooting some other rams and be patient. I think just sometimes guys aren't patient. It's a little unique unit, because it's right by Lake Havasu. So those sheep are right there. They're pretty docile sheep.
Bikini
Um,
hatch sheep.
yeah, yeah. It's December though, Jay. So you, you can
Hey, a guy's got a dream.
you got to try. But it it definitely. I mean, the same genetics are there. I think some of those sheep from 16B can go all the way from 16B to 16A to 44 there, and back and forth. There, it's a good unit. Don't go in there expecting to shoot a mid 170s ram, just like 18B. Don't go in there expecting to shoot a 180. Had a guy call me last year that had one of the tags. Like, is there any 180s in 18B? I'm like, oh, like that's Carter Ram's a freak, you know. Don't go in there expecting that. Expect if you can find it. If you want to hold your guns, just one tag, and you want to kill, a buck ram, then hunt till the very end. If you don't have one found in preseason scouting, but if not, um, you know, a, a mid 160s is a big ram for that unit. That's historically what it produces, and you kind of got to go off data, but you also got to be honest with yourself, and what kind of hunter are you? How much experience do you have? Are you with a guide? But I think you can definitely kill a mid 160s in there if you work your ass off.
That's a great breakdown. Couple things before I let you go. What the heck is going on with Rocksteady? You're teasing us.
Yeah, man, I'm getting an education on building products and prototypes. So we're working on the fourth prototype bipod, um, prone to side slope bipod. It's almost done. It should be in my hands next week. I'm hoping this is the one. But what you learn through the process is, it's a process to develop a product. It's good being a little bit naive. Um, is good and bad because I don't know all the steps. Obviously, I'm looking at function and weight and all of the above from the hunting standpoint, from you know actually from in the field standpoint, and from a design standpoint. There's a number of different things that go into it. So obviously, I hired help, and Josh, the I would say the lead designer on it, and um, has worked his butt off to this point, and I think we're close to getting it out. I have to be 100% confident that it's something that I would use. For those of you that don't know, that are listening to Jay's podcast for the first time or don't know me, I decided to start a company last year. I actually started the bipod build 2 years ago, um, as far as from idea to now. And but I filed the LLC stuff last year. and I've been working hard on it with Josh for over probably a year and a half now on getting a prone to side slope sitting bipod. I think there's a lot of good bipods in the market, good prone bipods that are just, Atlas makes them. Some other companies make some good prone bipods, but the reality of it is when you guide and you hunt a lot, you realize getting prone is the number one position, but there's a lot of shots that you can't get prone on. I do a lot of predator guiding and predator hunting, and you're almost never prone on those. You're sitting on a side slope, and there's a number of late elk hunts that I do where you're on a side slope and you need to be steady and you need to have that shot, available to you, and you just don't have it with some of these short bipods. But we're getting there, Jay. Long and short of it. But it's a process. It's a lot longer process than I thought. I'm just not going to put out a shit product that I don't like. I have a prototype, the Gen 3 prototype, if you will, is on my varmint rifle right now. I've used it since February. It's just not what I want to go to market with. There's
Okay, let me step in here for a second.
Yeah.
We're talking about a perfectionist here with Mr. Steele. So, I mean, if he gets it to the market in the next 5 years, I'll be impressed. But when it comes, it's going to be dang good. I can promise you that.
Well, I mean, the reality of it is
you want it to be right? I mean, it's a big deal.
There's enough shit out there on the market, and for me, I'm not like one of these guys that has to have a new piece of gear every time a piece of gear comes out.
No, but you like gear that lasts and works for a long time.
That's me. I want something that works, that functions, that is not, if it breaks, the company's gonna stand by, and reality of it is,
I can assure you, Craig Steele
break.
is not fancy. Craig Steele is in this. He wants one that you can buy, and he knows that it'll work for 10 years. May not be the greatest business model, but that's just how Craig rolls. I've known him forever, and that's how you are.
There is no other business model, Jay. I think there's no other
build quality
model. There is none, because all the other stuff's been done before, and I'm not going to compete to race to the bottom. At the end of the day, I want to put out products that I'm proud of, and that ultimately that I'll use, and that's where the whole bipod came from. Is I had a ton of guys asking me about bipods, or they'd show up with a prone bipod, and I'm like, oh, that's great, but wait till we try to shoot this, 350, 360 bull on a side slope, and you're over there dicking with your pack, or trying to shoot off a tripod that you've never shot off of, and which was a time and a place for tripod shooting too. But anyway, so cool. We're getting there. It will be out before September. It will be on the market before September.
Well, you heard it. We'll keep his feet to the fire on this by September 2020.
Yep.
We're saying it today. Attaboy. I'm looking forward to it. Rocksteady. Check it out on Instagram. What is it? ROK_steady?
Yeah. And you can search. Yeah, it's ROK Steady. STEDI. You can search it on Google, and you can search it on Instagram or Facebook and find it. But
I'm looking forward to it. Buddy, it's always great having you on the podcast, you and Lee both. I know you're amped up for antelope season coming up and elk season, and we got to get these apps in by June 9th, and I encourage anyone that's interested in hunting Nelsoni sheep to give Craig and his partner Lee a call. Craig, why don't you tell the listeners, I'll also link it up in the show notes, tell the listeners how they can best follow you, reach out to you, what have you.
So you can go for our big game stuff, Exclusive Pursuit Outfitters on Instagram, Google, Facebook. Just type it in the search. It'll come up. That's kind of the best way to get to us for there. Or on my personal side, for if you have a question over anything, hunting, rock steady, predator hunting, anything on that side, just search on Instagram, Craig Steele AZ, or you can go to Facebook. And again, you can go to rocksteadyhuntinggear.com to find information about that. But just Google my name or look it up and search on any of the platforms, and you should be able to find me. I don't hide my cell phone number or my email; it's all available. Um, it's in my Instagram profile, so I'm pretty easy to get a hold of if you
He
put in
likes
a little
texts
bit of
about
effort.
10:30 p.m. at night.
Yeah, I'm usually in bed by then. I'm an early riser
You can use the
and
best time
early
to
to
catch
bed.
Steele's about 4:45 a.m. and he's drinking
Yep,
coffee. I promise you.
yep. That's when I'm most optimistic.
I still got to bring my basketball up there and show I can dunk right over you.
There's no basketball hoop open. This is
It's
the
crazy, isn't it?
freakiest thing.
I know.
So
All
anyway,
right, buddy. It's always great. Thanks for your knowledge there on the Nelsoni stuff, and look forward to seeing your progress this summer and this fall. And thanks for being a friend, and thanks for coming on here. Okay.
all right, man. Thank you.
All right. God bless. Bye.